Welcome back to our series, Meeting Jesus. We've been working our way through the Gospel according to Mark over all these weeks, and we're going to continue again this week as we head into chapter 9 of Mark's Gospel at a really important turning point, sort of an important new moment of clarity in the story of Mark's Gospel. And we've been sort of getting ready for it recently as Jesus finally got to the place where he asked his disciples at the end of chapter 8, "What do you say about me? Who do you say that I am?" And after a whole lot of amazing things they've witnessed and seen, and an awful lot of times they've been left scratching their heads, Peter blurts out, "You're the Messiah." And Jesus, kind of confusingly, stops him and goes, "Now don't tell anybody that." And then goes on to say, using a different title for himself, Son of Man instead of Messiah, that his role, his mission, is rejection by the respectable religious and political people, being killed, dying for his enemies and for his people rather than killing his enemies, and then rising from the dead on the third day, and then calling his disciples, "If you're going to follow me, this is your way of life too. We aren't here to build an empire or conquer our enemies. You're going to have to take up a cross and follow me. This will be your way of life too." This had completely upended what Jesus' disciples thought they understood, right? It took them 8 chapters of watching Jesus do amazing things that only God or God's anointed could do, right? Healing people, and commanding the wind and the waves to obey him, and walking on water. Jesus has done all these amazing things, and finally his disciples go, "This guy, maybe he really is who we've been waiting for. He's the Messiah." And Jesus goes, "Okay, but that's not what you're picturing." Because like we've said before, when first century Jewish listeners hear the word Messiah, they bring an awful lot of baggage. And a lot of that baggage is somebody who will be a military leader, a general, a conquering king who will violently overthrow our enemies, kill them, and then take back our country for God, that kind of a thing. Or who saw the coming Messiah as the one who would restore proper obedience to the law and would stay separate and set apart from wicked, sinful people, rather than Jesus, the one who doesn't look to raise up an army and intentionally hangs out with the outcast, the sinner, the mess-ups, the people who are seen as sellouts. That's a pretty big shock to Jesus' disciples. And of course, they're left kind of reeling. Well, maybe have we had it all wrong? We said Jesus was the Messiah, but maybe were we wrong? Is he not what we were expecting? So we need the story that comes next to sort of clarify again, no, Jesus really is the one we've been waiting for. But that still might mean letting go of our old expectations. So there's this story that comes from the beginning of chapter 9 of Mark's Gospel. After Jesus has told his disciples that anyone who wants to follow him is called to take up the cross and follow him. And that's loaded language, right? That doesn't suggest a hero's glorious death. That's like getting lynched. That's like getting killed by the firing squad, right? This is shameful death that Jesus is talking about. And yet, then 6 days later, it says he takes with him that inner circle, Peter and James and John, up with him on this mountain, and his appearance is transformed. The English translation usually will say he was transfigured. The Greek is metamorphosis, right? There's this change in Jesus' appearance. His clothes become dazzling white. He seems to radiate light. And then, even weirder, there on the mountaintop with him are 2 cameo appearances from Hebrew all-stars from ancient Israel's history, Moses and Elijah. They sort of symbolize the giving of the law, the important voice of the law, and Elijah sort of stands in as the greatest of the prophets. And they're talking with Jesus, and in some ways it's like they're giving their, to be crude about it, celebrity endorsement. They're saying, "Yes, Jesus, you are the one this whole story has been building toward." The same way that when an author gets another more famous author to write a recommendation or a quote to review their book that can go in the book jacket, a blurb that writers will do for one another, or when a politician gets a celebrity endorsement, right? They're just their presence at the fundraiser, just the other author's name on the book jacket is sort of a sign of, yes, I recommend, I endorse this person. Moses and Elijah had that feel of, they're saying, yeah, Jesus isn't crazy. Jesus, it sounds like it's not what we expected, but Jesus really is the one in continuity with the law that Moses brought and Elijah and the tradition of the prophets. So here's Jesus then sort of standing in as fulfillment of what God had been planning, designing, doing all along. And then God bless him, Simon Peter wants to hold on to this moment. Right? Could we just stay up here and I'll build little tents for everybody, and Moses, you could stay here forever, and Elijah, you could stay here forever, and we could just have this moment up here. And the way Mark tells the story, it's beautiful. Then a cloud overshadows them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my son, the beloved, listen to him." It's a voice that echoes the voice that came at Jesus' baptism, right? When Jesus is baptized, as Mark tells it, he's coming up out of the water, and a voice says to Jesus, "You are my son, my beloved. With you I am well pleased." And now the voice is in the third person. "This is my son." In other words, the voice isn't for Jesus' sake. He knows who he is. It's for Peter and James and John, who are kind of wrestling. Who is this Jesus? Were we wrong to say he's the Messiah? Were we wrong to say he's the Son of God? Are we completely wrong-headed about who he is? And here comes this voice confirming, "This is my son. This is the one you've been waiting for." But be prepared then. That means that when he tells you something that doesn't match your expectations, you're going to have to be willing to let your expectations go. This is the ongoing struggle of following Jesus the way Mark has presented that following. It means over and over and over again, when we meet up with Jesus and what he tells us about himself doesn't match with our expectations of what we want him to be, at some point we'll have to decide, will we take Jesus as he is, or will we hold on to our expectations and push Jesus away? Jesus keeps on surprising us, hanging out with all the wrong people, right? The sinners, the tax collectors, and the outcasts, refusing to take up arms and raise up an army to fight off those wicked, terrible Romans, and again, not being nearly so concerned with being only among the pure and the holy, but with the foolish and the dense and the thick-headed like his own disciples. This is the kind of community Jesus surrounds himself with. And because he's sent into a world full of messiness like that, they can't stay up on the mountain. Famously, Jesus won't let them stay up on the mountain, but they head right back down the mountain, and they are right back in the midst of things where there's somebody who's going to be having their needs and needs Jesus' help immediately once they head back down the mountain. Jesus now at this moment sort of turns toward the course toward going to Jerusalem is just about guaranteed. It's sort of set in stone now. The rest of the story of Mark's gospel is basically the journey to Jerusalem in that last week of Jesus' life that occupies like chapter 11 through the end of Mark's gospel. So we are almost to that final week of Jesus' life and all the events that happen in what we call as Holy Week. But even from this point, at this turning point, at the midpoint of Mark's gospel, chapter 8 into chapter 9, Jesus has made it clear, okay, I'm the Messiah, but now you're going to have to unlearn all you thought you knew about being the Messiah. Let me confirm for you, yep, that's who I am, but that what you think that word means is going to need some relearning and some unlearning of what you assume. Now, let's explore it. So that's the conversation we're going to be having this coming Thursday as we continue to gather around the table at 1 o'clock here at Community of Christ. But we invite you to join us if you can't be there in person with us in these video summaries, and in all of it, that we might continually meet Jesus and follow him along the way, even when he surprises us. Join us for that conversation. See you then.